The night was growing colder as the Huntress stood in front of the human, her eyes never leaving his. Her presence felt almost suffocating, as if the very air around them had thickened with her dominance. The human could feel the heat of her gaze, as if she could see into the deepest corners of his soul. He tried to steady his breath, to control his racing heart, but it was impossible. There was something about the Huntress that made him feel both terrified and captivated. Her strength was undeniable, her beauty otherworldly. She was a predator, and yet there was something almost alluring about her. It wasn't just her physical prowess. It was the way she carried herself, the way she commanded the space around her. She was a force, one that could easily crush him, but there was also a strange connection between them. It was like she understood him in a way no one ever had. She didn't just want to kill him. She wanted to see him submit, to see if he would give in to the primal instincts buried deep within him. He couldn't tear his eyes away from her. There was something magnetic in her presence, something that drew him to her. The human felt as if he were caught in a trap, his body betraying him as he remained frozen, watching her. The Huntress stepped forward, closing the distance between them. Each step she took felt calculated, measured, like she was preparing to pounce. Her eyes remained locked on his, unblinking, as though daring him to make a move. The human's body was on high alert. Every muscle screamed at him to run, but his mind wouldn't let him. There was no way out now. He had nowhere to go, and the Huntress had already made her move. She was too close for him to escape. The space between them had narrowed, and now the human could feel the heat radiating off her. He could smell her, a mixture of earthy scents and something almost like lightning, a charged energy that made his skin tingle. And then, unexpectedly, the Huntress stopped. Her hand moved to the hilt of her weapon, but she didn't draw it. She didn't need to. Her presence alone was enough to hold him in place. The human felt a strange sense of curiosity mixed with fear. Why hadn't she attacked? Why hadn't she finished what she started? She had him cornered, vulnerable, and yet she hesitated. Her eyes softened just slightly, and for the first time, the human saw a flicker of something other than the cold predator he had been facing. It was fleeting, almost imperceptible, but it was there. Why? The human asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Why haven't you killed me yet? The Huntress' lips curled into a slight, almost knowing smile. Her response was simple, but it carried an edge to it. You are different. The human frowned, trying to make sense of her words. What did she mean by that? Was it just another game, another way for her to toy with him before the kill? Or was there something more to her hunt than he had first thought? She stepped closer, her presence overwhelming. The human could feel the weight of her gaze, the power behind it. The Huntress was no longer just a hunter. She was something more, something that made him question his own instincts. Do you want to escape? She asked, her voice low and almost teasing. Or do you want to stay? The human hesitated. His mind screamed at him to run, to find a way out. But a strange pull kept him rooted to the spot. It was as though her question had awakened something deep within him, a part of him that had never been there before. He had always been a soldier, always trained to fight, to survive. But now, standing before this alien Huntress, he felt something else stirring inside him. Could it be desire? Could it be something else entirely? He didn't know. He only knew that the Huntress had changed the game. She wasn't just after him to kill him. She was after something else. She wanted him to want her to catch him. The tension between them was thick, and the human's mind raced. He couldn't explain it, but part of him wanted to stay, to face whatever the Huntress had planned for him. The Huntress reached out, her hand gently brushing his arm. It was a simple touch, but it sent a jolt of electricity through him. It was as if she was marking him, claiming him as her prey, not through force, but through some deeper, unspoken bond. You are mine, she whispered. The human's heart skipped a beat. The words were both terrifying and exhilarating. He had never been in a situation like this, never faced an enemy that didn't just want to defeat him, but to make him beg for defeat. He was caught in her web now. There was no escaping her. But did he want to escape? Was there a part of him that welcomed the idea of being her prey, of being caught and held by her power? The Huntress' eyes glimmered with a knowing look, as if she had already read his thoughts. She stepped back, giving him space. but the human felt like he was still trapped in her gaze. The human sat on the soft moss bed, the weight of everything settling on him. He was no longer the hunter, the soldier, the survivor. He was something else now, something that didn't quite fit into any of the roles he had once known. He was here, in this strange cave, at the mercy of the Huntress. The Huntress had given him a choice, or so it seemed, but now, sitting in the quiet of the cave, he couldn't help but feel as if he had never had a choice at all. His body, his mind, everything about him had been pulled into her world, and now there was no way to escape. He looked around the dimly lit chamber, the walls lined with bioluminescent plants that flickered softly in the dark. The air was thick with an earthy scent, a stark contrast to the dry desert outside. The cave felt like a different world, one that he wasn't entirely sure he understood. The Huntress had stepped back when they entered the cave, allowing him space to breathe. To think, she hadn't said much since they had arrived, but he knew she was watching him, studying him, trying to understand the depths of his mind. He had agreed to stay, to learn, to be part of her world. But what did that really mean? What was she asking of him? What would she teach him? And more importantly, what was the cost of his choice? The sound of the Huntress' footsteps echoed in the cave as she moved toward him. She was silent, but her presence was impossible to ignore. He could feel her energy in every corner of the chamber, as if she were a force that filled the air itself. "Do you understand now?" she asked softly, her voice carrying an edge of anticipation. The human didn't answer right away. He wasn't sure if he understood anything at all. His mind was still trying to catch up, still trying to process the whirlwind of emotions and thoughts that had filled him since the moment she had first appeared on his trail. "I'm still trying to figure it out," he said quietly. Looking up at her, the Huntress didn't seem surprised by his answer. Instead, she sat beside him, her presence overwhelming, filling the small space with a heavy tension. She didn't speak right away, but the silence between them felt like an invitation. The human couldn't help but feel drawn to her, as if he had no control over his own instincts anymore. He had resisted her, stood his ground, but now he was starting to question everything. He had been caught, yes, but now he felt like he was falling deeper into her world. "You are not like the others," she said again, her voice softer now. "You do not run from me. You stand and face me, even when you know you are at my mercy. That is what makes you different." The human turned to look at her, searching her face for any sign of what she was thinking. Her eyes were steady, unwavering, and for the first time, he saw something in them. It was not just the cold, calculating predator he had first seen. It was something else, something deeper, something he hadn't expected. "What am I to you?" he asked, his voice hoarse. "What is it you want from me? Why do you keep me here?" The Huntress didn't answer immediately. She studied him for a long moment, as if deciding how much to reveal. Then, slowly, she placed her hand on his shoulder, the touch surprisingly gentle. "You are not just prey to me," she said, her voice soft but firm. "You are more than that. I brought you here not to break you, but to understand you. You are strong, in ways that others are not. That is why I chose you." The human's heart skipped a beat. He had been a soldier, trained for combat, for survival. But what she was saying didn't make sense. Why would she care about his strength? Why would she bring him here to learn about him? "But I don't understand," he said, shaking his head. "Why me? Why not someone else? What makes me different?" The Huntress' fingers tightened slightly on his shoulder, grounding him, keeping him still. "It is not your strength alone that makes you different. It is your willingness to stand and face what you fear. You do not run from the challenge, no matter how great. That is what I seek." The human stared at her, trying to make sense of her words. What did she mean by that? What was she really after? Was she trying to break him, to force him to submit, or was there something else, something more than just the hunt? "I'm not sure I can be what you want me to be," he said quietly. "I don't even know what that is." The Huntress smiled, her eyes gleaming with something that almost resembled affection. "That is the point, human. You do not need to understand it all yet. You only need to be willing to learn, to see the world through my eyes, and understand why I hunt." The human felt the weight of her words settle in his chest. He was no longer just a soldier in a foreign land. He was something more, something that had been pulled into her world by forces he didn't understand. The sun had almost set, painting the sky in hues of purple and gold. The human remained hidden in the rocky outcrop, barely daring to breathe. Every muscle in his body was tensed, waiting for the Huntress to make her move. He knew she could sense his presence, but he was determined not to make a sound. Every second felt like an eternity. He glanced out from behind the stone, his eyes scanning the darkening landscape. The Huntress was still out there, somewhere. He couldn't see her, but he could feel her. It was as if the air itself had become charged with her energy, making his skin prickle. The human's mind raced. What was she waiting for? Why hadn't she attacked yet? Was this all part of the game, or was there something more at play? He pushed the thoughts away, focusing on the task at hand. He had to survive. That was the only thing that mattered right now. He was trained for situations like this, but nothing could have prepared him for the encounter with someone like her. The Huntress wasn't just an enemy. She was a force of nature, something beyond the ordinary. He had seen her movements in his mind 1,000 times before, each one precise and calculated. But now, in the quiet of the desert night, the weight of her presence was overwhelming. Suddenly, a sharp noise pierced the stillness, cutting through the tension like a knife. It was the sound of footsteps, soft, but unmistakable. She was moving again. The human's heart pounded in his chest as he crouched lower, trying to remain unseen. He knew he couldn't outrun her. She was faster, stronger, and far more skilled. But there was something else, something that gnawed at him. Was it possible that he didn't want to escape? Was he being drawn to her in some strange way, like a moth to a flame? No, he had to focus. Survival was the only goal. But his mind kept returning to the Huntress. Why was she so different from any other predator he had faced? The Huntress' silhouette appeared against the darkened sky, moving silently across the landscape. She was closer now, closer than he had ever anticipated. The human's breath caught in his throat as he stared at her, feeling an overwhelming sense of awe mixed with fear. Her movements were graceful, yet lethal. There was an elegance to her that made her seem almost otherworldly. Her tall, lithe frame moved with the fluidity of a cat, each step measured and purposeful. The Huntress wasn't just a warrior, she was a predator in the truest sense of the word. The human couldn't tear his eyes away from her. She was a thing of beauty and terror, a creature who had mastered the art of the hunt. As she moved closer, the human's instincts screamed at him to run, to get as far away as possible. But a strange force held him in place. Was it fear? Or something else entirely? The Huntress paused, her head tilting slightly as if she sensed him nearby. Her eyes swept the area, scanning every shadow for any sign of movement. For a long moment she stood perfectly still, her body tense and alert. Then, without warning, she took another step forward. Her eyes locked onto his hiding place, and for a brief instant, the human felt as though time itself had stopped. The chase had reached its peak. She knew he was there. The human's mind raced as he weighed his options. He could make a break for it, try to outrun her. But that seemed impossible. He could feel her presence closing in, and he knew that if he moved now, he would be caught. So, he stayed still. He remained frozen behind the rocks, his heartbeat the only sound in the night. The Huntress was so close now that he could almost feel the heat radiating from her. He could see the faint glint of her weapon, an elegant, curved blade strapped to her side. It was a weapon made for precision, for quick, decisive kills. The human knew it would only take one strike to end him. But despite the fear gnawing at him, he felt a strange sense of calm. The Huntress' eyes narrowed as she advanced, her gaze never leaving his hiding place. She moved with purpose, her every step bringing her closer. The human's mind screamed at him to run, but his body refused to obey. He was frozen in place, caught between the instinct to flee and the curiosity of what would happen next. She stopped just out of reach, her breath steady and calm. For a moment neither of them moved. It was as if the world had stopped, the desert holding its breath. Then, the Huntress spoke, her voice low and dangerous. "You can run, human, but you cannot hide. You are mine now." The human's heart pounded as the weight of her words sank in. There was no escape. He was trapped in her game. But as he stared into her eyes, something shifted. This wasn't just a hunt anymore. This was something more, something deeper. The Huntress didn't just want to capture him. She wanted him to want to be caught. The human stood still, his mind racing as the Huntress' words echoed in his mind. He had agreed to this, to whatever game she was playing, but now he wasn't sure what to expect. What had he just agreed to? Was he ready to face whatever this would lead to? The Huntress stepped back, watching him closely as if waiting for his next move. Her eyes were intense, almost predatory, and yet there was something else there. Something he couldn't quite place. Her gaze wasn't just cold and calculating. It was filled with something deeper, something more than just a desire to capture. "You've made your choice," she said, her voice low and steady. "Now you will see what it means to be caught, to become part of something more than just a hunt." The human couldn't help but feel a mix of anticipation and dread. He had chosen this path. But now that it was real, he didn't know if he was ready for what lay ahead. But there was no turning back. He had crossed the line, and now there was only one way. Forward. The Huntress turned away, her movements smooth and graceful. She walked a few steps before stopping and glancing over her shoulder. "Follow me," she said simply. He hesitated for a moment, but something inside him told him to follow, to trust her, to see what she had in store. He stepped forward, his boots crunching in the dirt as he moved toward her. The Huntress led him across the barren landscape, her pace steady and sure. She moved like she owned the land, like it was hers to command. As they walked, the human couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed between them. This wasn't just a predator and prey dynamic anymore. It was something more complex. They weren't enemies, but they weren't allies either. They were something in between. The Huntress didn't speak as they walked, but the human could feel the weight of her presence beside him. She was still leading, still guiding him, but he wasn't sure where they were going. He wanted to ask questions, to demand answers, but he held back. He didn't want to break the fragile tension between them. He wanted to understand, to figure out what was happening before he spoke. After what felt like hours, they arrived at a secluded cave, nestled between two towering cliffs. The entrance was narrow, barely wide enough for the human to fit through. The Huntress stopped and turned to face him. "This is where you will stay," she said, her voice firm. "You are no longer just prey. You are part of my world now. You will learn what it means to be with me, to belong to me." The human stared at the entrance, his mind struggling to process what she had just said. He had agreed to be caught, but now, standing at the mouth of the cave, he wasn't sure if he was ready for what that meant. He had stepped into her world, into her domain, but what would he find there? The Huntress reached out, her fingers gently brushing his arm. "You are not alone here," she whispered. "You will be a part of something greater, something that transcends the hunt. You will understand me, and I will understand you." The human swallowed hard, trying to make sense of her words. He had no idea what she meant, but he didn't question her. He had come this far, and there was no turning back now. He stepped forward, entering the cave, and the Huntress followed him closely. Inside, the cave was dimly lit by the soft glow of bioluminescent plants that lined the walls. The air was cool, filled with the scent of the earth, and the sound of distant dripping water echoed through the space. The human looked around, taking in the strange beauty of the cave. It felt like a sanctuary, a place apart from the world they had left behind. The Huntress guided him deeper into the cave. Her steps sure and steady, she led him to a small chamber, where a soft bed of moss and fur was set up in the center. "This is your place now," she said, her voice softening just slightly. "You will stay here, and you will learn what it means to be mine, to be part of the hunt." The human looked at her, his mind still racing. There were so many questions, so many things he didn't understand. But in that moment, standing in the cave with the Huntress, he felt something stir inside him, something he couldn't ignore. He had been a soldier, a survivor. But now he was something else. He was part of a world he couldn't fully comprehend, and despite the fear that still gripped him, he couldn't deny the strange pull he felt. The Huntress had caught him. And now, for better or worse, he was hers. He nodded slowly, unsure of what to say. "I understand," he whispered. The Huntress smiled, a look of satisfaction in her eyes. She had won. She had caught her prey, and now she would show him what it meant to belong to her world. She had captured him in every sense of the word. He was hers, and she was his. They were no longer hunter and prey. They were something more. They were equals, bound together by something deeper than the hunt itself. The human stood in silence, his mind racing with the weight of the huntress' words. Every part of him screamed to break free, to fight, to do anything to escape the strange pull she had over him. But no matter how hard he tried to focus, to think clearly, he couldn't escape the fact that he was trapped, not physically, but mentally. He was caught in her game. He was being hunted, but not in the way he expected. She didn't just want to kill him, she wanted to possess him, to see if he would bend to her will, to her strength. The human's heart beat loudly in his chest. His instincts told him to flee, to find any way out, but his mind was clouded with a strange fascination for the huntress. It was as though her power over him had awakened something deep inside him, something that made him want to stay and face whatever she had planned. The huntress was still standing in front of him, her piercing eyes locked onto his. She studied him, as if trying to figure out his next move. She had given him a choice, or at least it felt like a choice. "You don't have to fear me," she said softly, her voice almost gentle. "But you will have to trust me, trust that you are worth more than just a trophy." The human didn't know how to respond. Was this a trick? Was she toying with him, trying to break his resolve? Or was there something real in her words? He swallowed hard, feeling the weight of the moment. "You want me to trust you," he said, his voice low. "But I don't know anything about you. What are you really after? What do you want from me?" The huntress stepped closer, her presence almost overwhelming. Her eyes were still locked on his, but there was something else there, something he hadn't seen before, a flicker of something human, something vulnerable. "I do not seek to harm you," she replied, her voice firm yet soft. "I seek to understand why you do not fear me like the others, why you stand here, unbroken, even when you know you are at my mercy." The human stared at her, trying to make sense of her words. She wasn't like any predator he had ever faced. She wasn't driven by hunger or revenge. She was driven by something deeper, something more complex. "I'm not afraid of you," he said again, but this time, his voice held more certainty. "But I'm not sure what you want from me. You said you do not want to kill me, but why chase me? Why play this game with me?" The huntress was silent for a moment, as if contemplating his question. She stepped closer, and the human could feel her presence pressing in on him. There was nowhere left to run, no escape from the situation he had found himself in. "I want you to understand something," she said, her voice low and intense. "I have hunted countless beings, and none have stood before me as you have. None have resisted in this way. There is strength in you, strength that makes you different from all the others." The human felt a shiver run down his spine at her words. She was right. He had resisted her. He had stood his ground when any other would have fallen, would have begged, would have given up. But he wasn't just resisting her. He was resisting everything he had ever known. "I don't know if I want to understand you," he said, his voice strained. "But I don't want to run anymore. I don't want to be afraid of you." The huntress studied him, her eyes never leaving his. Then, she slowly reached out, her fingers brushing his cheek. The human froze at the contact. Her touch was light, almost gentle, but there was an intensity behind it that made his heart skip a beat. "Then do not run," she whispered. "Let me show you what it means to be caught, to be hunted, but not as prey, not as something to be destroyed, but as something worth capturing, worth understanding." The human didn't know what to say. There was something in her voice, something in the way she looked at him, that made him want to stay, to see where this would lead, to explore whatever connection was growing between them. He was no longer just the prey. He wasn't just the hunted. He was something more. He was part of the game now, part of whatever strange bond the huntress was creating. "Do you want this? Do you want to understand me? Do you want to be captured, to become part of my world?" she asked softly, her voice holding a strange allure. The human hesitated, his mind spinning with the possibilities. What was she really asking? What was the cost of giving in to her, of letting her claim him as her own? But something Deep inside him told him this was different. This wasn't just about survival or winning the chase. This was about something else entirely. Something far more dangerous. He nodded slowly, his voice barely a whisper. I want to understand. I want to see where this goes. The Huntress smiled, a slow, predatory grin that made his heart race. She had him now, not just as prey, but as something more, something that had willingly given in to the game. He didn't know if he was ready for this, for whatever it meant to be part of her world. But one thing was clear. There was no turning back now. He nodded slowly, as if accepting that he had no choice. I'll learn, he said quietly. But I don't know if I can be what you want. The Huntress' smile widened, and for a brief moment she looked almost proud. Then let us begin. The days that followed felt like a strange dream, one that the human couldn't wake from. He had agreed to stay, to learn, and now he was in a world he didn't fully understand. The Huntress had kept her distance, allowing him space to think, to process everything that had happened since their first encounter. But no matter how much time passed, the feeling of being caught never left him. The cave became his home, but it didn't feel like a refuge. It felt like a place where he was both safe and trapped, where he was being molded into something new. The Huntress had kept her word. She hadn't forced him into submission, but instead had guided him, teaching him how to survive in her world. She didn't explain everything to him. She didn't need to. The lessons were subtle, woven into their interactions, the way she watched him, the way she tested his limits. He had learned how to hunt, how to move through the wilderness with silent grace, and how to rely on his instincts in ways he never had before. It wasn't about surviving the hunt anymore. It was about understanding it, understanding why the Huntress did what she did, why she saw the world in the way she did, and somewhere along the way, the human began to change. He no longer saw her as just a predator. She was something more. She was a force of nature, but also someone who had her own reasons for the things she did. He had begun to respect her, not out of fear, but out of understanding. She was the way she was because the world had shaped her, just as the world had shaped him. One evening, as the two of them sat together in the quiet of the cave, the Huntress spoke. Her voice was softer than usual, almost contemplative. You have changed, she said, her eyes studying him carefully. You are no longer the prey you once were. You are something else now. The human didn't respond immediately. He had felt the shift within himself, the change in how he saw the world, how he saw her. He had stopped resisting the pull she had over him. Instead, he embraced it, allowing himself to be shaped by it. I feel different, he admitted, his voice low, but I don't know if I can ever be what you want me to be. The Huntress didn't seem bothered by his words. Instead, she smiled, the corner of her lips turning upward in a way that almost seemed knowing. You are already more than what you were before. That is enough. He looked at her, his eyes searching her face. What happens now? What is it that you want from me? The Huntress didn't answer right away. She looked down at the ground, as if contemplating her next words. Finally she spoke, her voice calm but firm. I want you to be part of my world, she said. Not as prey, not as a conqueror, but as an equal. You were caught, yes, but now you have become something more. You have learned what it means to be hunted, but also what it means to be free. The human felt a rush of emotions at her words. He had learned, yes, but had he truly become what she wanted? Had he become part of her world? He didn't know, but in that moment, something inside him shifted. He had no desire to escape. He no longer wanted to fight against her. He wanted to stay. He wanted to understand more, to see where this strange bond between them would lead. The Huntress stood, her movements fluid and graceful. She walked to the entrance of the cave, looking out at the desert beyond. You are free to leave, she said, her voice quiet but firm. But if you do, you will never know what it means to truly belong. You will always be a wanderer, an outsider, never truly part of anything. The human stood slowly, walking toward her. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew one thing for certain. He was no longer a soldier, no longer just a survivor. He had become something different, something that belonged to her world. He stood beside her, looking out at the horizon with her. I choose to stay, he said, his voice steady. I choose to be part of this, part of you. The Huntress turned to look at him, her eyes shining with something he couldn't quite place. Then you are no longer just my prey, you are my companion, my equal, and together we will face whatever this world has to offer. The human felt a strange sense of peace wash over him. For the first time in his life, he felt like he truly belonged, not as a soldier, not as prey, but as someone who had found their place in a world far beyond anything he had ever known. And in that moment, he knew that the Huntress had not only captured him physically. The game had changed. He was no longer just the hunted. He was something else now. Something that made her want to catch him more than anything else. The human stood motionless, his heart racing in his chest as the Huntress took a step back. Her eyes remained locked on his, as if she could read the thoughts that swirled in his mind. He couldn't understand what was happening. Everything he knew about survival, about being hunted, had been turned upside down. She wasn't just chasing him, she was waiting for him to decide. But decide what? Should he fight? Should he run? Or should he submit to her, let himself be captured, and embrace whatever twisted game she was playing? His mind raced, his thoughts spinning in 100 different directions. The idea of being caught, of being dominated by this alien huntress, was both terrifying and strangely enticing. There was something in her that made him feel alive in a way he had never experienced before. The human couldn't tear his eyes away from her. She was the embodiment of power, grace, and deadly intent. Every movement she made seemed calculated, precise, as if she were a predator playing with her prey. But why hadn't she struck yet? Why was she waiting? He couldn't understand it. The Huntress took another step closer, her eyes narrowing slightly as she studied him. She seemed to be sizing him up, evaluating him in a way that felt almost intimate. You are not like the others, she said, her voice low and almost thoughtful. You do not run, you do not beg, you stand here, facing me, as if you have no fear. The human felt a rush of blood to his cheeks. Was that a compliment? Or was it just another tactic to make him feel exposed, vulnerable? I'm not afraid of you, he said, his voice hoarse but firm. I've faced worse than you in my life. The Huntress tilted her head, her eyes gleaming with amusement. You think so, and yet here you are, standing before me, knowing that I could kill you with a single strike. The human didn't flinch. He stood his ground, despite the fear gnawing at his insides. There was something else there, something deeper than just the fear of death. It was a strange connection, a sense of inevitability. The Huntress stepped closer again, until they were almost face to face. He could feel the heat from her body, the energy radiating off her. It was like being near a live wire, electric and dangerous. Her gaze softened slightly, and for a moment, the human saw something he hadn't expected. Vulnerability. The fierce predator was not invincible after all. She, too, had a weakness, something he couldn't quite put his finger on. Why are you doing this? Why chase me? Why not kill me and be done with it? The Huntress paused, as if contemplating his question. Then, with a slow, deliberate motion, she reached up and touched his cheek. The human stiffened at the unexpected touch. He had expected her to be cold, to be ruthless. But this was something else. This felt almost human. I do not wish to kill you, she said quietly. I wish to know you. The human blinked in confusion. What are you talking about? The Huntress' lips curled into a small, enigmatic smile. You are unlike the others I have hunted. I see something in you, something different. The human felt a mix of disbelief and fascination. He had always been the hunter, the one in control. But now, standing before this alien woman, he felt as if he were the prey, caught in her web. Why me? Why not someone else? Because you are not afraid to be caught, she replied. You are not. Like the others who run and beg, you stand your ground, even when you know you are at my mercy. The human swallowed hard, trying to process her words. He had never seen things like this before. In his world, a predator was only a predator until it was defeated. But this was different. He had never felt so out of control, so vulnerable. But at the same time, there was something thrilling about it, something that made him feel alive in a way he hadn't felt in a long time. The Huntress' hand slid down his cheek, her fingers grazing his jaw. The human shivered at the contact. It was as if she was testing him, feeling the strength of his resolve. "You don't have to be afraid," she said softly. "I won't kill you, not yet." The human didn't know how to respond. There was no denying that part of him wanted to run, to escape this deadly game. But another part of him wanted to stay, to face whatever it was that the Huntress was offering. What was she really offering him? Freedom, death, or something else entirely? He didn't know. But in that moment, he realized that the decision wasn't his to make. The Huntress was in control now. She had him, body and soul, and the game had changed. The sun hung low in the sky, casting an orange glow over the barren wasteland below. The human had been lost in this forsaken world for what felt like years, with no sign of civilization in sight. His water reserves were nearly empty, and his body ached from the endless trek across the unforgiving terrain. Yet, deep down, he knew he had to keep moving if he wanted to survive. In the distance, the faintest rustle of wind stirred the dry dust. He paused, narrowing his eyes as he scanned the horizon. The Huntress was out there. He could feel it. Her presence was always just beyond his reach, like a shadow in the corner of his vision. A chill ran down his spine at the thought of her. The alien Huntress had been tracking him for days, each step she took bringing her closer to her prey. He had heard the stories about her, how she never failed to catch what she pursued. Her skills were unmatched, her speed and strength legendary. But what terrified him more than anything was her relentless focus. She didn't just want to kill, she wanted to capture, to make her prey beg for mercy. He had seen her once, briefly, standing on the ridge of a distant mountain. Her silhouette had been sharp against the sky, a figure of terrifying grace. Her piercing eyes had met his, and for a moment, he felt like she could see through him, reading his every thought. The human's mind raced as he tried to formulate a plan. Should he run? Should he hide? Or should he turn and face her, hoping for a miracle? He didn't have much of a choice. The Huntress would find him eventually, and when she did, he would be at her mercy. But there was something else he couldn't shake, something strange, an unspoken pull that made him question everything. What if he didn't want to escape her pursuit? What if, in some strange twist of fate, he wanted to be caught? The thought was ridiculous, absurd. He was a soldier, trained to survive, not to be captured. Yet, as the day dragged on and the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the desert, the human found himself thinking of the Huntress in a way he hadn't expected. She wasn't just a predator, she was a force of nature. Her beauty, her power. The way she moved through the world with such lethal precision, it fascinated him. He snapped out of his thoughts as a sound broke the silence. It was faint, but unmistakable. The sound of footsteps, soft but deliberate, coming closer. His heart skipped a beat. He didn't have time to think. Instinct took over, and he bolted into the nearest rocky outcrop, hoping to find cover. His breath came in shallow gasps as he hid behind a jagged stone, waiting, watching. The Huntress appeared on the horizon, her figure now clearly visible against the darkening sky. She was closer than he had anticipated. Her movements were smooth, calculated, like a predator closing in on its prey. She was coming for him, and there was no escape. But this time, he didn't run. Instead, he waited. He wanted to see what would happen next, wanted to know what it would feel like to be the hunted, to be pursued by someone as powerful and unrelenting as her. The human felt a strange thrill surge within him. An emotion he couldn't quite explain. He had spent his entire life avoiding death. But now, in this moment, death seemed like something he was willing to embrace. The Huntress drew closer, and the human's heart beat louder, echoing in his chest. She stopped, just out of reach, her eyes scanning the area for any sign of movement. Then, her gaze shifted. It was as though she had found something new, something unexpected in the human. She stepped forward, her figure emerging from the shadows, her piercing eyes locked onto his. And for a brief moment, neither of them moved. The tension between them was palpable. The human's breath caught in his throat as the Huntress took a step closer. Was it fear? Was it desire? Or was it something else entirely? He couldn't tell. But he knew one thing for sure. The game had changed. The Huntress was no longer just after him. She was after something more, something she hadn't expected, and as she closed the distance between them, the human realized that he, too, was no longer just a prey to be hunted. He was something more, something that made her want to be caught.